All right, so we're on day 3 of the theme Be About It, and we're going to be talking about how to establish the boundaries. You know, there's lots of information about boundaries and what creates them, how they become an issue in your life, and then the further effects of not being able to have proper and appropriate boundaries. But there's not much to say how we actually do it. And so we talked yesterday or the day before about the processing of kind of how we move through deciding what's appropriate or what's not. And so we discussed, the first step is like some kind of external action or event.
Right. Something around us, comes up and triggers something in our brain, an unconscious or subconscious thing that triggers an emotion, and then we process that emotion with our brain.
Yeah, so it floods our body with hormones, right?
Right.
And it often pushes us into this fight or flight mode where we're like trying to survive.
Extreme ones for sure.
Yeah, and so we're talking obviously about boundaries that are not healthy, that are unproductive,
right,
that we're going to be addressing. So once you get to that point, we have to evaluate why we're doing it. So all the practice we've been doing up until this part, we're going to be challenging our beliefs, our thoughts, our feelings, why we're actually feeling uncomfortable, whose fault is it, right?
Yeah. Really, first trying to figure out what part we owned in putting ourselves in the situation with the external stimulation.
Yeah, and so it's funny because I said like whose fault is it, as
right.
if it's someone's we're a victim, but when you're in this state of mind, that's what you're thinking.
Right.
If you are feeling very uncomfortable and you're in survival, it's someone's fault. And so using that term will help you recognize, because when we can decide where the blame goes, often we choose, after you're doing this work, we'll choose to be responsible for our side of the street, our
right.
actions, and it's going to empower us.
Right.
And so it'll be a very quick turnover, to getting us to being able to make those changes.
Right.
So after we discover why, you have anything to say about why more?
I would just say that as you do this work, you can begin to reduce your kind of emotional reactions to outside stimulation by practicing acceptance of circumstances and reducing your expectations for any given thing to happen.
Yeah,
that's all I would try and just throw out there as an idea.
And it's definitely easier to do after you work through kind of your own, like your old beliefs. And this is an easy way to identify what ones you want to get rid of or the limiting
right.
ones.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's kind of like this long process of going back through each week that we've talked about. And you scale up and then come out and scale up and come out. And that's the idea of an onion being in layers, peeling.
Right.
You take one event and you work all of these
right.
options through. It happens. It comes more natural, right?
Right.
If you have the education, it'll come very natural and quick.
Right.
So then we have when.
When.
So you get to the place. So an event happens. You, intellectualize
right.
what actually happened, what's going on within you.
Right.
And then if you have to make a boundary with someone,
mm-hmm.
when do we do it? When's the best time?
Right. So I thought of this example as you were talking, and it has to do with, like, say you go next to a cliff, right? Creates a safety response. You're not safe when you don't feel safe when you're near the edge of the cliff. What are you going to do? You're probably going to go step away from it, relive the emotion a little bit, and go, how did I put myself in that situation? And then you're going to not go near the cliff.
Right.
And if the cliff is a person, you're going to go, I need you to stay away from me. I need you to not talk to me like that. So, whatever the appropriate words are, depending on your relationship with that person. Or if there's absolutely no reason for you to be around that person because, you can change your actions and control your space a little better, you implement that with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And so
and
it's...
Real quick, like jumping in, so if you decide that it's a specific person, altering your expectation could be all you
right.
need to do anyways.
Right.
And that's just a personal boundary or just a identification of your old belief mm-hmm. or expectation of what is possible in a situation or what's even fair, like a fair expectation.
Yeah, and I think just another idea to put out there, which we talk about sometimes, is the ability to not take things personally. And so when you can try and identify when you're making something about you that's not necessarily about you, you can separate yourself from somebody's behavior and then just kind of observe it, maybe not comment and just accept it, and then maybe find common ground with that person. Instead of reacting and, kind of creating this negative feedback cycle, you can go, I'm sorry you feel that way, or what can I do to help? Because you're kind of not operating on their vibrational level. And just an idea.
Yeah. So the most important thing with boundaries is if it's with someone that you're not operating on the same vibrational frequency, is to at least lean into it and hold a constant vibration. And so that really means like not give in. It's easy for us to enable other people, right? But what that does is it steals the opportunity for them to grow. And so if you can look at it like that and reframe it and, redefine it in that way, you'll kind of sit back and just be available for the process. However, when we're talking about boundaries, we're really just trying to practice identifying our wants and needs that are attached to beliefs, or our beliefs that are attached to these wants and needs, and get rid of these limiting behaviors and expectations of how people can treat us so that we can teach other people how we want to be treated.
Right.
So you have some of the statements on your phone that will be going over.
Before I get into that, I was going to say one more thing, and that is, you said why. And why, the reason we set a boundary is because we value our values, for example, safety, comfort, self-love, whatever, more than we do somebody else's feelings or anticipated negative response.
Well, we should.
We should, this is why we set a boundary.
Yeah, exactly. To just support that and build up our self-esteem. And so at the beginning, when we first talked about self-esteem, it's when you're looking at boundaries, and some boundaries present themselves in your life that need to be established, you can directly affect that to your self-esteem, and why you may be struggling in a certain area or aspect of taking care of yourself. So
just like we do, you've suggested in other areas about practicing things that you want for yourself with other people, you can practice implementing boundaries. What would you say if this came up? And you can do that, when you're finding space for yourself to, really reflect on and anticipate potential outcomes in a given situation.
Yeah, another place to look at things to practice are in movies. If something comes up that you get triggered by, or you're like, oh my God, what a dick. You can pause the TV and just run through a healthy way to respond to it. Because when you're responding, you're in control of your own thoughts and how you're being observed and not being observed, but interacting, right? Our action. And so it's an opportunity. Another one is to practice with your self-care. If there's something that you do during the day that you're not happy with or you're not proud of, like asking yourself if you're proud of your behavior is a really good way to decide on if you want to improve it or not. And if you want to improve it, then you attach meaning to it. Why do you want to improve it? You attach it to something in your end result, the future you of who you want to become.
Right.
And then you make a boundary with yourself to commit to either practicing something different or showing up for yourself in a different way, and you get to specifically say how that's going to happen.
Right.
And then it's up to you to do it. And if you try and set a boundary with yourself and you don't follow through, it's going to hurt your self-esteem. It will end up taking away because you will be compromising your own integrity, because it's going against your values and the future goals that you have for yourself.
Right.
So when you get to that point, it's not just practice, it's game time. You have to do it.
Right.
Yeah.
So here's a couple of examples that you've come up with to help people implement boundaries in difficult situations. I'm going to start with one of the better ones that I think is helpful, because people have a hard time with family members and like standing up to them and their friends. And so
we get used to being treated a certain way, and it lowers our expectations and our standards. And so after doing all this work, we want to increase our standards. Like if we know we're going to be treated better and get more out of what we want that aligns with us being happy, why would we not start doing that? And so,
so this one is, I love you, but I am unable to support this behavior any longer.
Yeah, and so I have used that multiple times with someone that I love, and it's been like this ongoing relationship where it's a cycle. The feedback loop is not the healthiest. It's not the most productive. And so over time I created space and very, limited it. At the beginning though, when I was just trying to learn how to establish boundaries, I had to come up with a phrase, and I wrote it down and I practiced it in the mirror so that when I was triggered or the outside event happened, I could just boop, boop, roll it off my tongue.
Right.
And so an example of that would be someone calling me or coming to visit and just pushing judgment everywhere, or gossiping. Gossiping is a really good example of it. And it's like, I know in the past we would entertain this conversation and have this vibrational contract, right, where we kind of talk negative about each other, and it let off certain hormones that we were used to and addicted to, which is why we wanted to do it. But now, as I'm trying to break that cycle, it's not something that I'm capable of entertaining because it does not align with, the future person I want to be. Mm-hmm. I want women to look up to me, and I can't look up to a woman who's always gossiping.
Right.
So that was just one example, but there's lots of other behaviors that it's okay to just say, I'm not in a space, or I'm not willing to condone this behavior. I just don't want to participate in it.
Right.
I'm not judging you for doing it. Just please don't do it around me. Please don't do it to me. Like, let's have, what I would like to do is have conversations about our goals, or traveling, or education that I learned about, and so saying one of these lines, if it's that one specifically, and then following it up with a solution is very helpful.
Yeah, I think it's a big difference between what somebody who is very good at practicing implementing their boundaries and somebody who's maybe new or not very good would be the use of judgment words within their boundary setting. And so you can set the same boundary by telling somebody you don't like them, or by telling them you guys are different, and it's not working for you. Make it about you, and you will most likely not offend the other person. Make it about them, and it's most likely going to offend them.
Yeah, so I statements. I statements are a must. It's not really negotiable if you're trying to, have your boundary land, which we've talked about, in our communication, is if your message is being received. So why it's important. And be prepared for someone not to receive your information well, because they're going to lash out because you're trying to break, or you are breaking, the vibrational contract that you have had for so long. And why do they lash out? Because they're used to it. They're familiar with that, and that's their expectation of you. And so just like us, if my expectation gets broken with Kyle, I'm irritated. I don't really care what caused it, but that's my first reaction, because it puts me into this survival thought of, it's not consistent, it's not secure, because that's not what I'm used to.
Uncomfortable feelings, I think, is a great way to describe it.
Yeah, but that's reframable, right? And so know that the stuff that you have to reframe with yourself, you also have to reframe with other people, and it takes waves for those people who you want to put the effort into maintaining and keeping the relationship. Yeah. What's another one?
Another one is, I am feeling uncomfortable for whatever reason right now. Can we discuss this at a later time?
Yeah, and so that's important, because you're just saying, something is triggering me. I need to look at myself. I need to kind of do some reflection and figure out what's going on before I continue this conversation, because I don't want to take it out on you.
Right.
And so that is a very nurturing way of not just protecting and modeling beautiful communication and self-esteem to the other person, but also to yourself.
Right. Yeah. I think probably it's a long
Good.
Video.
Yeah, so we will have, there's about 10.
There's about 15 or 20.
Of these statements that you can say, and they fit in with different relationships that you may cross, and we'll have them uploaded.
As a document underneath the daily reflection. Or sorry, yeah.
The daily reflection or the week?
The practice.
The practice. So please download that, print it out, whatever, look at it. When you see these, go to the mirror and just read them off and look at yourself, because you will see in your body how unpracticed you are with using these powerful statements. And so the statements are designed to tap into your self-esteem and your personal power. And so it's a very different vibration than scarcity and feeling like a victim and feeling like you're being bullied and abused, which is normally how people in negative feedback loops feel. So That's just a heads up. Okay, so we'll see you tomorrow.